Welcome to Season 5 of SEL in EDU. This is a space for educators who believe social emotional learning isn't an add-on. It's part of how we teach, lead, and show up every day. I'm Dr. Krista Leh, and in each episode, we'll explore real stories, practical strategies, and the human side of learning that helps schools grow with intention. Today, I'm joined by Dr. Natalie Odom Pough, a mathematics educator, teacher educator, and program designer whose work centers on joyful, justice-centered math and helping students see themselves as capable learners. What stayed with me most from our conversation was her idea of a soft life, the belief that classrooms can be spaces of connection, care, and possibility, not just pressure and performance. As a middle school math educator, parent, and leader, Natalie brings together identity, culture, and learning in a way that feels deeply human, reminding us that teaching is not just about the content. It's about seeing students, honoring who they are, and helping them grow into who they can become. Welcome back, SEL and EDU family. I am incredibly excited to be sitting here with Natalie, also an emerging leader. And before I hit record, she mentioned the phrase, the soft life. And Natalie, could you please revisit? And I think that would be a powerful way to kick off our conversation.
I'm really just focused on having everyone, children, adults, the elderly, realize that we can all have a soft life. And I don't have that kind of power or control for everybody, but I do have expertise, and my hands are in the middle school mathematics classrooms. So that's where my focus has really been. I'm raising a tween who'll be a teen in May, and then I've got a stern-minded 8-year-old who is like this amazing disciplined gymnast, but she doesn't always apply it to everything else. So it's like, I'm in this world with these two powerful little beings, and they're reminding me that we don't always have to be barking at each other. We don't always have to be fussing. Like, we can actually have communication in space. And so that's been our focus, is just realizing that it can be a soft life for all of us. We deserve it.
And you've picked up on a couple things. Not only are you working with middle school students, but you're teaching math and raising your own children. And so I feel like you're at the center of so many pieces around identity and who I am and what I'm good at, how I show up with our students. When you think about that in terms of math and cultural competency and empowering students, what are some of the first experiences that rise to your mind that lead you to think we can have a softer life?
Just realizing that how so much of our society is focused on comparing and just making us feel less than. And it's even before social media. This is what the world was. Everyone did this sport because everyone was doing it. And it was like, it was odd to be the person doing that one thing. Like, I was always the girl in Girl Scouts, and I was the only person in my class in Girl Scouts for a long time. And, like, after Brown, I went on a state to be a junior in Girl Scouts. And so it was like, why are you doing that? Why are you wearing that uniform? And it was always that oddball instead of just acceptance. And our society has always done it that way. And I just found like that's the drum that I've always beat. Like, I look at things and I'm like, I like that. That's cool too, but I really want to try this. And typically those are spaces where you don't see Black girls or brown girls in, and you're trying to figure out, how do I fit into this space because I want to be here? And so you're fighting that battle, but why do I have to fight it? Why shouldn't the door should just be open and allow me to come in? And so as I grew up in that world, it was to the point where when I had two daughters, it was like, I don't want them to have to fight to fit in. Like, if I want them to have this type of education and where the focus is completely on education, I want to teach them all the other things, like the responsibility and the accountability. And that's my job. And I appreciate when people on the outside want to support me. But again, it should be support. It shouldn't be, a whole new set of rules that my child can't understand and I don't understand. It should be on me. So, when I look at these things from a parental position and then I walk in as a teacher and as a teacher educator, it's to the point where I like these two worlds have to come together. They cannot live separately. And the true art of teaching is a very personal endeavor. And when we realize that's when we bring all of our content to life, whether it's math, science, social studies, we have to realize like we've got to reach these kids. We get our standards, we get our scope and sequences, we get our textbooks. Yes. When we have all these materials, the group of children in front of you deserve a personalized experience from all of these materials. Granted, they give us a standard and they say, hey, teach ratios and teach proportions. How are you going to reach this particular child? Like, the last group of kids I taught was in the rural South Carolina math classroom. I had to focus on what their likes and dislikes were and what their culture was like. And that's how it required work from me, creativity from me. And that's the joy of teaching, making those tweaks so that the kids can connect with the math. That just helps you as much as it helps them. And that's what it really has to get down to, is just realizing how personal it is. It's not a canned thing that you can do with every kid. What I do down here might not be what they do in California, and someone else is going to do it differently in New York, but at the same time, they're still learning that math skill.
I just want to really acknowledge and pull out is that you mentioned that we have been doing the comparison game before social media came. The social media has exacerbated it and it's made it like a 24/7 thing.
Mhm.
Remember as a young person feeling like out of place, trying to figure out who I was, and not even layer on ethnicity, race, language, religion, socioeconomic status, like just trying to figure out what does this mean for me and what is my space. You mentioned about one of your daughters being highly competitive in gymnastics and thinking about that's a very competitive sport where you're given numbers and you're compared to other people. I am curious, what does that look like for you as a parent, knowing that you're opening up spaces where we're not focusing on comparison, yet your daughter's passion is a practice or a love that often happens?
Believe it or not, I was a pageant girl. So it was
You
completely
believe
standing
it.
on a stage and letting somebody just judge you from head to toe. So when I have these children, it's like, it's not about you. I had to grow up and realize you are your only competition. So when you finish your apparatus, finish that event and you jump off that apparatus, whatever score it is, that's your score. That is what you did. And however it falls with everybody else, so be it. But it's not that you're going to sit here. She won floor at the state competition this past Saturday. We've been floating. But then there's this other little girl who comes and she does this vault, but you see her arms and they're like, whoa. My daughter's not, she doesn't have that strength. So they're in the same group and she's looking at her and she's like, do you see her arms, mom? I said, I saw her arms. And I said, baby, you're shaped like me. You may never get those arms. And that's okay. So how are you going to work with what you have? We have those conversations. It's like, this is the whole idea of you want to be in this sport with the body that you have. How are you going to manage it? Not how can I be like her? That's not what you're here to do. And we always lean on Simone Biles because it is the sport, but she always said, they're like, oh, you're going to be the next Michael Phelps. She's like, no, I'm going to be the first Simone Biles. That's exactly the mindset you have to have in everything that you do. It's like, I'm not here to be anybody else but myself. And that's what I've been teaching both of my girls. My eldest is a volleyball player and she's trying her best to find that space. She's really tall and trying to realize like, this is my job. We're trying to help her realize her potential. And it's hard because she's at that tween teen stage. So the comparison side, it's really hard to get her out of that mindset, but we all lived it. So instead of forgetting how it was when I was that age, I remember it and I try to guide her and coach her and try to protect her as much as I can because some things, so she goes too far at some things and we just have to sit down and talk about it. So it is communication, but at the end of the day, knowing that you are your only competition.
I just started reading books from Dr. Benjamin Hardy and Dan Sullivan, and they have this concept they call your unique ability. And so at first I was thinking that was all one word, but I like it because it talks about what are your strengths. And if you have these unique strengths, like your one daughter might not have the physical body type of this other person, her specific body type will allow her to leverage her strengths in a very unique and different way.
It's so important for our girls to understand it's not, you don't go through comparing yourself to anyone else. Just focus on what you have been given and how you can cultivate that into something worthwhile.
How does that same philosophy translate into the classroom when you're thinking about math? The reason I ask this is because I'm the first person to be like, I'm not a math minded person. I've read the growth mindset book and I'm like, I need to get that out of, I can, but it takes me twice as long. What does this philosophy look like when you're working with many young people in the classroom around a topic that many consider themselves maybe not strong at, not a strength?
Yeah, it doesn't change. It's the exact same thing. And I have to coach parents and say, this is one of the pieces in middle school that we often forget. We think, oh, they're no longer babies, so we don't need to talk to the parents. But we need the parents more now during middle school and high school than ever before. Now, yes, little Johnny may not have known their phone number and address, and that's why they needed mommy in elementary school. But now they need them for the emotional support. And the parents need to also be encouraged and even educated to how to deal with their kid at this stage. Sometimes parents don't realize it, and we think of adolescence as just a phase we go through. Like it's a life shift. And if we didn't focus on it when we were going through it, then we definitely don't know how to do it as parents. So it's one of those things where teachers see it every single day. And when we look at our students as individuals, we're able to support the parent of the child as long as we see them as individuals. And so that's how I teach. I've always taught in a way where I see each child and I see their ability. So we're not focusing on who made an A and who made a B. Now, I did have a wall where we all always celebrated A's and B's, but the wall encouraged students. So students who were like never making A's and B's in math actually wanted to make A's and B's in math. So they was working harder. But it wasn't comparison wall. It was just like, hey, you did it. Go celebrate yourself, that kind of deal. But it's to the point when I'm working with parents, I actually say, your child is really good at this and this. The way that you can support them is by doing X, Y, and Z. And sometimes it is like when you're driving down the street, just scream out some multiplication facts and see if they can respond. It's not about speed. See if they can respond. And then you'll hear parents like, can I use my calculator? And I'm like, well, if you use your calculator and I don't let kids use calculators in my class, we're kind of conflicting here. And they're like, oh, you can't math me. You're not my math teacher. Let me be your math teacher too, because I want the kids to be able to stand on their 2 feet and do simple math problems and not always rely on calculators. And that's just using the brain that we were given, being able to think critically through processes and problem solving. And that's what we need our kids to be able to do. And sometimes they need to see the adults be able to do it so that they can feel like they can do it as well. So yeah, all of this goes right into the classroom. It's not Johnny made 100. Why didn't you make 100? No, it's not about everybody else. It's let's focus on your child. How did they prepare for the test? Did they do X, Y, and Z that I provided? Did they watch the videos? Did they do this? And if there's a yes or no in any of these questions, that's where we hone in because we want to help each individual child. I know it's cumbersome. When I taught in DC, I had like 136 kids throughout the day that I saw. So it was hard to individualize every single kid, but it was possible. And they need it, especially in middle school.
One of the things that you reminded me of is when our kids are young, there's all of these books that you can read from like birth to 6 months, 6 months to a year, the toddler years. We as a society, I don't think go towards like, let's get a book on the years. So we are just kind of floating around trying to figure it out. And your focus on bridging that with the caregivers, with the parents, with the family members is so critical because often in schools, I feel like we say this is how school is and we invite parents to it, but we don't open up a pathway. I love how you said, well, I can be your math teacher too, knowing that there are things that we can learn from our parents as well. So the other piece is having 130 students teaching high school. One of the ways that I would try to make sure every student was seen is that on Wednesdays, I would look through my list. Who have I not had a one-on-one with, even if it wasn't related to school? And then I would do my best to focus in on that on a Thursday, Friday, a Monday if it had to be. What are some tips and tricks that you have found work for you on being able to bridge that one of you to 130 students to have students feel seen as individuals?
Yeah. I remember my dad is one of 13. And my memory just can hold on to this one comment. And I remember one of my uncles saying, Mama had 13 kids, but we all felt like only two. Like she made time for all of us. And I'm like, I've got two. So I'm sitting and thinking, as an adult, you have it in you. If you want it, you have it in you. Like there's this human ability to see every single one of my children. And when they walk into the classroom, I'm actually focused on just how unique and special each of them are. And so when I see children, to me, it's a natural thing. Like I don't want to miss a moment. Like it's to the point where when I feel like, oh, I haven't talked to her in a while, or I haven't talked to him in a while, I'll make a time to do it. Or I'll reach out to folks and say, hey, I saw him doing this. And they don't even know I saw it. But like, I just want you to know that he was working hard and just to have that connection because it's important. You want your kids not, a kid won't learn from someone they don't like. Rita Pearson said that a long time ago. And it's like, she was so on it. But it's not that I'm going to work for them to like me. It's just, I like them and they're quirky. I get them in middle school. I get them 3 different phases of them. You'll see them if I get them in 6th grade and you see them in all at 7, they're totally different kids. And you see them in 8th grade, they're a totally different kid. And that's okay. But I get to love the one that I get. And that's what I really want to give to them. It's not common. It's not easy. Everyone goes through something. But as long as you see them, and I don't have to know your personal struggles, I just see who you are in my classroom. So there are times when I call parents with good news and parents are like, "Who, my kid?" And I'm like, "Yeah, like our kid, like he's amazing in my space. Or what you do that I don't do?" Like we're having those conversations, but it's special. And I think that's important to just actually make time to see every one of them. Even that one that gets under your skin, there's something there that could make flip the switch. It doesn't always have to be. And most importantly, I think I just remember I'm the adult in the situation. So if anyone's going to morph or change to fit the situation, it's going to be me. So if a kid has an attitude, I'm not going to match with attitude. I'm going to match with love because I'm the adult in the situation. I'm the one that should have more control over my emotions to where I'm not going to be combative with this child. It's like they went through something today. A kid comes crying in and there's tissue over here. And then sometimes they just want to talk. They want to tell you why they're crying and what's happening. And if I have the time, I want to listen. But then, like, is there something that we can hold on to after class? I promise you. Can you put it in a box and we'll open that box up as soon as everyone's out of here? I promise. Those kind of things just to help everybody be seen. I know I'm not the guidance counselor, but in the space that I have, I get to cultivate that culture. And whatever the school's culture is, whatever the community's culture is, none of that matters in my four walls. And so when I'm there, I get to create the loving environment that I want where we communicate, we listen, and we respect one another. And those are expectations in my space. And they know it. You can't giggle at somebody. Like if you don't want to be shot by my looks, like you're not laughing at classmates and we're not poking fun. We're being respectful because we're going to respect everybody. And if you can do it now, you know how to turn it on in other spaces as well. So that's my goal is just to let them know and feel. Like I said, I want you to have a soft life. So if it's for the 45 minutes to an hour that you get to experience that soft life, then maybe later on in life you'll create that for yourself because you're going to long for it. I miss being safe in class. I really miss not being poked at, being made fun of. Therefore, everyone around me, I'm going to only include in my circle those kind of people. And so you got to have that experience. It's just like going to a city you've never been to. It's like you want to have these experiences that you've never had. And sometimes it is just as simple as having a respectful bubble of time where people just see you and love you and just respect you at that time.
As you're talking through so many different social emotional learning skills from knowing who you are and your identity and your strengths and your values. And naturally, as we navigate through life, we're going to have some missteps, some conflict that is not a bad thing, but helps us figure out who deserves space in our life. One of the things that I like that you said when we think about social emotional learning is I'm not a counselor. And I used to say that too. I know I'm not the counselor, but I can be a listener who is a conduit to that counselor. Hear what you're saying. And I have a friend who has expertise to help you there. So I'm glad you came here so I can help you take that next step.
Exactly. I love that. Thank you.
I really want to honor that you said is that you give students the grace to show up as who they are when they want to. Understanding that we're all works in progress and what you see 1 year or 1 month or maybe even a day, depending upon what happens, is going to influence how we show up next. And you're like, come on in. I want you in all ways that you're showing up today. And so I'm curious for you, has that been something that has been a lens and a focus since your beginning years teaching? Or is that something that you have developed over time through navigating different situations with students?
Yeah. It's a little bit of both. My second year of teaching, I had the empty desk where a child was there one day, went home, and he didn't come back the next day. And when you have that, and no one talks about that part, it's like it's always the parents. And again, nothing to take away from the parents because God knows I wouldn't know what they were going through. But the teachers matter too. And just it's what I would give to have like one more day of hugging. These were sixth graders, so they were still hugging and loving on me in those days, just to have that hug one more time. And so that was my second year of teaching. And it was to the point where you hit that level of trauma to where you now realize, and even after he passed, we got to meet the parents. Like we didn't really know them before. So then you're now face to face with these families and you're seeing what they're going through and you're like, whoa, you have no idea until you're in that situation. And so when I had that empty desk the next day, the kids were just mortified. They were like, well, who's going to sit there now? And so we had to end up honoring that space to where it became a part of me. And it was just like, from here on out, it's not going to be, oh, here comes that kid again. Hey, how are you? Because I don't know if this is the last time I'm going to see you. And it altered how I see people in general. It's almost to the point where it just humanized me altogether to where I have a stronger understanding of acceptance when this happens. It's like it's things you cannot control and how you can break it down and you hold it together. Because again, we had a whole day of just mourning. It was mourning out loud because a lot of kids saw the accident happen. So it was a lot of that and where we had to stay strong. And they never really made space for the teachers to deal with it. So when I have these moments, everything's not morbid, but it's where it takes me to. When I see kids, I see promise. I see the future. And so what I want to do in the time that I have with you, I want to pour everything I can into you so that whenever you manifest whatever it is that you want to do with your life, you have that foundation. And I'm a firm believer that our paths cross for a reason. It's not random. I'm fully aware when I get this roster, it's like this is who has been chosen for me to guide them in this year. And these are the parents that I get to connect with this year. And I'm all about like, I've got students I taught 15, 20 years ago that I've met on social media and I get to catch up with them and see all their kids. And I love that part of it. And there's some that I'll never see again, right? Like that's just things, but they're in my heart. And when I see them, it's like those eyes that I taught, the small versions of eyes in this adult body comes back and you're like, this is what the job is all about. And so when we remember that piece, and that's really important when I do my teacher training, like I'm a teacher educator now, and it's like, you might be here for the benefits, you might be here for the weekends off and my Saturdays off, but I'm going to teach you the true benefits of this job. And this is what you have to carry with you. And you can't walk into this. I know at one point they opened the gates and like, anybody can be a teacher, you know? And I'm like, it's not that. There's heart, there's intelligence, there's a whole lot of things that come into that that's not really given to us in college. Like it's got to be a part of us. And sometimes you just got to activate it. And to me, losing that student activated it for me to where it's always been that way. These kids become a part of my heart and I just can't let it go. And because of that, I try to give them the best of me every single day. And that's really how I carry it. And that's, again, that SEL piece of it, it was a lot about me growing up as well and just realizing that was my second year. I came in as a master's MAT student. So I wasn't like a fresh out of college person. So I was probably 24, 25 when I first started teaching. But again, still partying and going out with people and realizing Sunday through Thursday, I couldn't go out anymore. The kids need the best of me. So I need to be in the bed, be rested, be prepared, have my lesson plans together. You know, I had to learn all that. Some things that a lot of people have to learn, and that's what I deal with undergrad students, even and graduate students, is sometimes you got to remind them, how do you show up best for these kids when you're exhausted? And when those things happen and you put up there's always a wall, there's already a wall that helps you not see every single child. But when you're rested, focused on the job, you see every single one of them, whether it's 20 of them or 120 of them. You see them all and you want to help them all.
Thank you for sharing that, because that's another side of education that they don't always talk about, is that we have the best intentions and we see these bright futures for our kids. And I will say our kids, I used to say, you're my unbiological
Exactly.
that change that path for some of them. And I was going to ask, what do you do to help yourself be at your best? And you shared that you make sure sleep is a priority, that you focus on the students in front of you that next day. What other piece of advice do you give the teachers you're working with now so that they are able to navigate that emotional side of teaching and continue to show up as the best version of themselves?
If anyone's listening to this that actually knows me, protecting my peace is my thing. It's my non-negotiable. I'll give you my all, but don't come in with the negativity. Don't come in with the extra. I'm giving everything I have while I'm here. And I've got boundaries. So it's like when I'm gone, I'm gone. Mama hat goes on and it doesn't come off until I'm back at work. And wife, again, I'm in daughter and sister and every other hat that I have to wear has a space. And it's not, I don't live to work. You know, like that's it. Like I work to live. And there's countries that do this and they have that whole philosophy and that whole culture. And I'm like, well, I want that too. And I'm not going to sit around and wait for somebody to give it to me. I'm going to take it and I've earned it. My thing is like, I've done the whole 24 hours a day teacher where I worked all day and came home and sat on my computer and did all this other stuff for other people and uplifted all these other people. That was the first 5 years of my teaching. And then I realized they were taking advantage of me because when I joined DCPS and it's that there's a teacher union that makes sure that I don't have to have duty and eat lunch with kids and tutoring for free was not an option. Like that's what taught me. Everyone's not all for unions and such, but it opened my eyes to how the boundaries need to be set. And so when I came back south where we don't really have unions, that's when I realized it's let me hold my own boundaries and have my own peace. And once I realize that balance, again, when I'm at work, it is I'm all in and I try to be uplifting. I try to be supportive and show people through the work that I do how it's done. Like my students would always say, including when I returned to the classroom in Atlanta after being in higher ed for about 5 years, when I grade, I always gave tests back pretty quickly, always since the first year I've taught. And I kept telling them, I said, it's a conversation. Like I have taught. Hopefully you've learned. Now here's a test. Tell me what you know, and I need to tell you my responses to that as soon as possible. And everyone's like, why do you do that? Or how do you do that? Those are two things. I said, because I take it very seriously. It's not a, let me just take this stack of paper and I'll get to it whenever I get to it. I'm like, no, that's a whole conversation that you are holding up. And it's that level of professionalism. And to me, that's a part of professionalism, but then it's not common. So I think that just might be a way that I think about the teaching portion of it. So to me, it's just like a personal thing that I do. If I show you the severity of my portion of the teaching and learning process, then I want you to do the same. I want that same energy. I want that, you give it to me and I'm gonna give it back to you. And then if it's not the right move, then I want to support you into learning how to get where you need to get. And it shouldn't take 2 weeks to get to do that. So I have a hard time with it, as an educator when I see other educators who don't see it that way, especially with my own kids. And so we've made adjustments because I want to be a part of their learning. And I've seen where teachers kind of like cut us off. They don't have time to email us and keep us in the loop and things like that. And I get it, but there's priorities. And to me, it's like the whole child includes their families. I emailed parents every week telling them what we're going to do for the week. Every Sunday, that email went out. I typed it on Friday. I did it during work hours, but then it would come to their inbox like 8 o'clock on Sunday mornings. And so if they wanted to read it, they knew what was happening in math. If they didn't want to read it, that's fine too, but you have the information if you want it. And once that happened, parents had like all the respect in the world for me. So when I called, they actually answered. They were like, oh, it's not computer. I got to talk to her. Like, I know it's annoying, but I told them, I said, I'd rather send you an email that you delete than a phone call that takes up some of your time. Like you don't have to read it if you don't want to, but just know the information's there. But it helped so very much. And I've been in spaces where you're like, why do you do that? Well, I'm not doing that. I'm like, oh, that's you. But this is what protecting my peace looks like over here. It's just like me giving my all so that when I need them, when the kids are acting up in class, it's a phone call, a trusted phone call between adults, and we're all working together to get it fixed. And that's what it ends up being. It's just putting that little extra in there so that you can enjoy your job and the life that you have as well at the exact same time.
I did not fully start having these realizations until COVID for me, where I would think about my work life balance has always been a little off, but I would think about how am I giving everything I have to people during the day that I don't have the patience, the understanding for when I go home to my own kids. And so I would want I just need 15 or 20 minutes of some quiet time, whether it's in my car before I go into the house or when I go into the house and the boys are watching TV or something. I'm like, I just need a little time in my room so I can be the best version of myself. And I did start thinking about that agency piece brought up that no one's going to give it to us as educators or in professions. We have to determine what that is and set that boundary for ourselves. I also had this huge aha when you talked about assignments and work that students are turning in. And you said it's a conversation. And I wish you had been there to tell me that years ago. I was so happy that Michael B. Jordan won the award because I saw that movie and I'm like, oh. And then I watched it 3 times in a row, and it's my go-to. The music, the story, the culture, the background, the history, everything. In one of the pieces that got me in the beginning was, I'm not going to remember if it was Smoke or Stack, is coming out of his car and he's talking to a young girl and she negotiating money. And he said, numbers need to be in conversation.
Mm-hmm.
And that phrase stuck with me, being somebody who's like, I don't like math. I can't do math. And then you talk about assignments and work and showing what they know is a conversation. And that really just resonated with me. And that flip of perspective puts a whole new mindset, which would change my actions.
And like, honestly, that's what the focus should be. We had that huge push when I was in school. I'm an 80s baby. So I was in school and the read posters came out. It was read, 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 read. And I did love reading. I absolutely love reading. But as a math teacher, I'm now like, you get into these spaces. Oh, my kids hate word problems. They hate this. And I'm like, no, they don't. We just give them stupid word problems that don't mean anything to them. I was like, tell them something that matters in a word problem and they'll care. It's like, When I taught in DC, we talked about everything. The kids are like, "Oh, I'm going to the Nationals game." Bet. We'd have like a spelling bee, and the kids who won the spelling bee got to throw the ball at the net. Like, I paid attention to what was happening in the community, and that was the problems on the paper. And sometimes I'll meet mathematicians. They're like, "Oh, put your students' names in the word problems, and that'll make them focus more." And I'm like, "Yeah, it gets them, but the content and the context of these problems have to make sense." And we teach math in isolation, and kids don't really. One thing that I've done for probably the last 10 years, even in graduate school, when I'm teaching teachers, is to have them focus on you just met me, but every teacher who has come before me has taught you something that you need to bring to the table. So it's not like a clean slate and you're starting over. When I got back into the classroom with sixth grade students, I did the exact same thing. I said, every single teacher who's come before me has taught you something. So I'm not going to be reteaching everything. You're going to be teaching the stuff that you should already know. And so when we did warm-ups, the kids did the warm-up. It's not my job to teach you the stuff that you already know. I want you to teach me that you already know it, and I'm going to build on top of that. And so when kids see that math builds, like reading builds and science builds and everything else builds, when they see that, they realize it's not an isolated content. That's where it has been. It's been like a little island sitting up here by itself. And I recently wrote an article for the Worthy Educator that actually spoke on that work. Like me bringing in the gubernatorial election of 2018 and teaching the kids what too close meant. Like when they saw how close that race was between Stacey Abrams and Brian Kemp the first time, and they kept hearing the second time it was happening again. Let's stop saying so close and show them exactly. So they'll see how one town, if they all went and voted, however they wanted to vote, it could have swayed the entire election. Let's stop saying so close and talk about the reality of it all. When we have those type of conversations, the kids will see the mathematics and everything that they do. And that question of, well, when am I ever going to use this? And they realize, like, just sit back and listen because I don't know when I'm going to use this. But the thinking part, the problem solving part, all of that is so important. And that's what our kids really need to focus on. And the adults in their lives have to focus on that part too.
The other takeaway I get from that story about the gubernatorial race is your vote matters. Even though you think I'm just one person, you're important and you can make a difference. And that's a very powerful piece as well.
That moment, I'll never forget that moment. We were sitting in a school in Atlanta in the district where John Lewis served. And while we're having this conversation, you're seeing how close that race was. And the kids go, I bet that upset John Lewis real bad. And this little sixth grader brought it up. And I'm like, whoa. And I got chills because I'm like, why is his name coming up in my math classroom? But again, he's not a foreign person to them. They know him. And I'm having this chill, but they're making that connection with history and how much he gave for people to vote. And then his own district, well, not district, this is a state at this point. We're looking at the whole state, didn't come out and vote in 2018. And so we talked about how Stacey Abrams and so many others went door to door and how that changed the landscape to where Joe Biden was able to win in 2020. And it's one of those things, not that she went around saying Democrats vote. She was like, just vote, get out and vote. And more people voted in Georgia, but she saw a larger turnout that year than ever before. And I said, you got to realize those things. Like people literally put their lives on the line for us to have these rights. And then some of us just sit back and say, oh, well, it's whatever. And so that was a moment that, like I said, it will stay with me forever. When that kid said that out loud, because I didn't know that's where we were going, but we went there and it was like I chilled and tears, and I'm like, you guys are geniuses. This is what math is. Like math makes you realize everything, and we just got to own it. And just when we do, we make sense of everything.
Makes me happy as a social studies teacher who would focus on the civil rights movement and people who were brave and courageous, and that his knowledge base. And again, I understand regionally, but just it reminds me too how interdisciplinary content is. And we do silo it, but if we had an opportunity to have social studies and math teachers sit down together. And okay, I just had this huge aha because I'm working with a school right now and they're teaming. And normally you would assume that ELA and social studies would be together and science and math, and they switched it. And I believe it's social studies and math working together and ELA and science. And now I see through your story the power of those two content areas working together and how it could be interdisciplinary. Here is why, and the brilliance you could come with being able to bring those content areas together. One of the pieces I've been hearing quite a bit from middle school and high school educators is that our students are not willing to engage in productive struggle. Sometimes it's confused with motivation, but ultimately it's, what do I do next? Where do I go? And a part of it, I think, is that it's not relevant. So there's not really an interest. But I'm wondering, are you seeing anything around productive struggle and students not wanting to stretch and go through the hard parts of learning? And in math, what tip or trick would you offer to teachers to help them encourage students that the struggling is what makes your brain grow and will help you?
Absolutely. I see it all the time. I get the beautiful in my math courses, I get this beautiful concept of or this aspect of my class where I get to go into the classroom and see them teach. And it's not really an observation on student behavior or anything like I'm there watching my student teach in his or her element. So often they are using the productive struggle and the discourse in the classrooms, and the kids are working in groups. And I'm seeing it happen so brilliantly. The key to it is that foundational piece. It's not that you can just toss a problem at a kid and send them off, and you have to set it up. Too often, teachers will say, "Oh, they don't know this and they don't know that." Make sure that you taught it before you give them that piece. There's also that behavior side of things. Well, the kids won't act right if we put them in groups, or they won't do the work. Teach that as well. That's a culture addition. In your classroom, whatever you want can go if you present it in a way where kids are going to respect it. This is not the generation where you're going to say, do what I say. It's in our environment. We're going to have discourse and dialogue, talk about what we're learning and how we're learning and how we can build one another up. And that's a year long thing. That's not okay, now we're doing this activity. So y'all need to be respectful. And no, this has to be all year round. Like they know in this space, we're not going to do anything but help one another grow. And that's really where I want the focus to go when I'm educating my teachers, and especially when I'm observing, like it's gotta be a natural thing. It can't seem like it's being forced in that moment. It needs to be built up. So not just because I'm here, now all of a sudden everything's perfect. It needs to be like this even when no one's watching. And that's one tip that I would offer teachers, but you said it best, is that relevancy. It has to be something the kids care about. Like even if you've got this content and the textbooks going left and right because these textbooks people creating them in all kinds of states and their focus is something else that's not yours, or there's someone in Texas trying to write a South Carolina math textbook and it's not the same. Like you're here, I'm in these little towns like I think it's Maysville. Like I'm thinking of Mary McLeod Bethune. She's from a little town called Maysville, and that's out there in the quieter part of South Carolina. Really, really rural area out there. But if I'm there and the kids only know like the restaurants that are locally there and they may not have a chain restaurant at all, then that's what I need to talk about. Those are the areas I need to focus on. What do their parents do for a living? The factories that are around, because that's what's relevant to them. So your word problems need to focus on them to where they want to think about what it is that's happening around them. I just think we need to center the children where they are and realize it's going to change. Every year that I taught, I'd always delete my lesson plans. And now that I'm 20 years in, I hate that I've done it that way, but I always wanted to start fresh. One year I had these kids, and it's like this mama had a kid in sixth, seventh, and eighth grade. And I'm like, I can't do the same project because they're just going to give me what their other brother did. So I had to change things. And when that started happening, I just started changing it all together, and I enjoyed it. I enjoyed it starting fresh and just keeping the memories of what happened. I wish I had an archive of things to go back and say, "What did I do in 2006?" I don't remember like I used to. But it's to the point where it's just I wanna start fresh because I have a fresh group of people in front of me, and I wanna serve the people in front of me instead of using something I've done for 10 years, and just cultivating those learning experiences to the students that I have, and I think that part's very important.
On the flip side, as somebody who has kept every single lesson for all of my years, looking back on it makes me very embarrassed. And I feel like I want to get a hold of some of these students, be like, I'm so sorry. I wish I had to. And I did revise every year. I aspired to what you were doing. I could do like maybe 1 or 2 lessons per unit. I'm like, okay, I need to fix this. And every year I would just keep reiterating it, but I kept everything. And I'm like, oh, I used to think this was good. Yeah, no, not anymore.
That's the evolution of it all. Like, in that moment, it probably was the best thing ever, and then as we grow, it evolves, and that's it. I understand completely, because, I mean, it has not always been perfect for me either. I'm certified in math and social studies, and it was just the 2 darndest areas to teach at the exact same time. It took me a while to realize, like, instead of having them separated, let's bring them together. Let's start thinking at the same way, and it was an experience in itself. So, yes.
An experience that I think would have fully benefits the student, and that's who we're here for.
Yeah.
Thank you for that new mindset around that piece and so many other pieces around the way we view assignments and the way that we can individualize students and keep them at the center and bring in families. As we work on wrapping up, if somebody is listening, what are the best ways for people to get a hold of you, Natalie? We are going to put it in the show notes, but if they're listening and want to hold on to that.
Yeah, I'm here. LinkedIn is my thing. I went through this whole social media detox. And so it used to be where I would spend a day and just swipe and see what's all happening out there. I stopped that maybe about 4 or 5 years ago. And so I pop in and out. But you can find me, and I typically respond within, 24 hours or so. But I am on LinkedIn, Instagram. It's probably the best two places to reach out to me. And then, of course, you can always email me at pew@gmail.com, all one word. I'd love to keep conversations going. If you've got a bright idea and you want to actually sit down and talk about it, let's do it. I'm here for everybody if I can, and I support as much as I can.
Thank you. I appreciate your time. I think you'll need to come back on again because I had this whole list of questions around SEL and math, and I feel like we went in such a unique and beautiful place that maybe we need to have a part two in a couple months.
Of course, so we can really focus on. But yeah, this is a great introduction, and we got to have a natural, organic conversation, and I'm grateful for that. Seriously.
And it was all important pieces that needed to come up and I could be happy and find valuable as they continue learning. So thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you for being part of the SEL in EDU family. As you move into the rest of your day, I invite you to notice one small way social emotional learning showed up in your thinking, your relationships, or your work. Until next time, take care of yourself and keep making space for meaningful, connected learning.